Okay, well, good evening, everyone, and thank you for attending Branham's Senior Parent Night. We're going to go ahead and get started. This presentation is going to be recorded and it will be up on the school's website starting tomorrow. At the end of the presentation, I will show you where you can access both the presentation and all the other kind of forms that we're going to go through within this presentation tonight, but we will go ahead and start with introductions. My name is Danielle Morella and I'm one of the school counselors for students with the last names M through RI, and I will let Ms. Miguel introduce herself.
Hey everybody, my name is Erica Miguel. I am a counselor for last names A through FL. And actually I wanted to make sure and let everybody know that I did the Spanish translation. It's on the website and I will go ahead and say that in Spanish now. Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Erika Miguel. Hice la traducción de esta presentación y la puse en nuestro sitio de web. Voy a poner el enlace en el chat para que lo tengan y también cuando mandamos el correo electrónico. Gracias.
And Ms. Davis?
Hello, everybody. Good evening. My name is Joyce Davis, and I work with students' last names beginning with the letter F-O through the letter L.
And Mr. Lieburn?
Good evening, everyone. I am Vince Lieburn, and I have students with the last name R-O through Z.
And we also have Ms. Perez with us tonight.
Hi everyone, I am Patricia Perez and I have the opportunity to work with all Branham students.
And we do have Ms. Hillman as well on the screen with us, as this is our first Zoom webinar for a parent night. So she is just going to be on tonight in case we have any technical difficulties throughout the presentation. We did go ahead and disable the chat. If you do have questions throughout the presentation, please use the Q&A section. So if you have questions, you can write the question in there, and then one of us counselors will try and respond to those questions as we can. Some of them might be a common theme throughout the night, and so we will address those questions at the end of the presentation. All right. So I wanted to start off tonight just with information regarding changes to the application process or what they're requiring with COVID. It has been a very fluid changes throughout this whole experience with the pandemic. So this year, out of any year, I would say is going to probably be the most important year for your students to really do their research. They do need to make sure that they are looking on each campus's website to see what they are still requiring and what they may have changed with their requirements based on COVID, especially with the SAT and ACT testing. So it's really important that they look at each campus individually to make sure that they are seeing whether or not maybe the campus has moved to test optional or if they have moved to test blind. With most of the information, kind of what we are hearing from the different campuses, many colleges have moved to either what's called test optional or have moved to test blind. When I have attended some conferences this year, when they are saying test optional, it really truly means it is optional. And so the students have the opportunity, if they were able to take the test, if it was a good score and they want to submit their test scores, they still can. And it would be part of their application process. If they took the SAT or the ACT and it wasn't a good score, then they have the option not to submit it, and that's okay too. For students, we do know there are a lot of them out there who are not able to take the SAT or ACT just with it being canceled because of COVID. Many of the colleges have stated that if they are not able to send a test score and they are test optional, they will not be at a disadvantage because they were not able to take it. That would just be something that they would put in their additional section comment of the application that they were not able to take it as it got canceled. What we have learned is that the CSUs have moved to test blind. So test blind is another option that some colleges are taking. What that means is they're not going to require the SAT or ACT at all. And so they don't need to submit it as part of their application. In addition, we have learned that the UCs are suspending all ACT and SAT and their admission purposes. That article just came out about a week and a half ago, I believe. So they will not be taking any SAT or ACT scores. What we have learned is that both the CSU and the UCs will be taking the SAT or ACT if your students do want to submit them. for placement purposes. So if your student gets into that college and decides to go, then they can still submit their scores so then they can get placed in the appropriate English or math class. Just want to make sure. One last piece as well, for the CSU system, they have come out and said that for California students with a GPA of 2.5 and above are eligible for admissions. As long as they have that 2.5 and they have met the A through G requirements, then they are eligible to apply as normal. If they have a GPA of a 2.0 to a 2.49, then what the student will need to do is they will apply, but then they will also be asked to submit some supplemental information as well. And that could be different types of courses they've taken, extracurricular activities. It could even be household income. There's a different list on their website that we can provide you at the end of this presentation. But that's what they're doing, because really at the CSU system, when they are looking for admission purposes, it was always the GPA and the test scores. So because they are not using the test scores, this is how they're moving forward for fall admissions for 2021. And then lastly, most of the colleges have come out and said that they are going to take the grade of P that we used last semester, so P for passing, in order to still meet the A through G requirements, but they will just not be including that semester in the GPA for admission purposes. And I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Davis.
And yay, I remembered to unmute myself before I started talking. Okay, everybody, graduation requirements. We all know these. This is probably the fourth year we're going to talk about it, and maybe if we include 8th grade presentations that the counselors made, you also heard it then. But things have changed a little bit since that one. So hopefully you've been paying attention, and we as counselors have been, but we have an awful lot of you. And so we do depend upon you looking over your transcripts as well to make sure that we've caught everything. So history, 3 years. As you know, freshman year you didn't have history. So we're looking at world history, U.S. history, and then 1 semester of government and 1 semester of economics, which you should be in right now. English, all 4 years. Mathematics, 3 years. And that would include IM 1, 2, and 3 for some people. It would also include IM 1, 2, and senior math for others. Science, all 3 years you should have taken biology, chemistry, and physics. Those are the requirements for Branham, also for Campbell Union High School District. 2 years of world language. They must be in the same language. So we're talking about consecutive Spanish 1, 2, Mandarin 1, 2, or French 1, 2. ASL also is included in that for those of you who either took it at the community college yourself or did our dual enrollment program in conjunction with West Valley. Visual and performing arts, 1 year, that would be 10 credits. College preparatory, elective, most of our electives are college preparatory, and that's 1 year. CTE, that stands for Career Technical Education, that's 1 year, unless you completed 2 years of visual and performing arts. We have a few classes that would have met that, and your counselor, I'm sure, has gone over it with you, but foods is a real indicator for one. And then that would look at some of the other, such as AVID, leadership, some of those we're including in that as well. Physical education, 2 years. Most of you completed that in the first 2 years of high school, and then there would be 2 years of electives. The grand total to graduate would be 220 credits if we did the simple math, and your student took 6 classes each semester with 8 semesters. That would be a grand total of 240, so they would have well over their need to graduate. Next slide, please. Senior year goals. We know you're over it, but you can't be, okay? So we need you to take rigorous classes and to still study hard. I get it. In this pandemic, everything is more difficult, but that is what separates the women from the girls and the men from the boys. Okay, you need to pass all your senior classes. Don't get cute. Okay, you got to pass them in order to graduate. With a C or better, we're asking you to do that because your options open up when you do something like that. College campus visits. Well, you're going to have to do the research and see what particular colleges you're looking at and what they're doing. There might be some that are doing in person with a limitation of how many are in each group, and as well as attend college fairs, but most of these things are being done virtually. We don't know all about every college in the union. Neither does Ms. Perez. She knows an awful lot, but I know she doesn't know about every college in the world. So you're going to have to do that research and see. Little bit, college list. All right, many of you want to apply to every college in the union, and that is really not necessary. I know my oldest daughter on her original list had 20 colleges. I would have had to have taken out a small business loan in order to pay for those application fees. So go easy on your parents. Okay, between 5 and 10 is sufficient. SATs, ACTs, I believe Ms. Morella covered that. You can take it if it's available. I was just talking to a young man yesterday who said his June, his July, his August, his September SAT test dates had been canceled and there was none that showed available. So I'm not sure you're going to be able to take any in this fall, at least. For those of you who are planning to go to an out-of-state school or a private school that requires a letter of recommendation from your teacher and or from your counselor, you need to complete what we call a counselor survey, a teacher survey, and parents, you're not off the hook. You have to complete a parent questionnaire. We'll call yours a questionnaire. It's a survey. And we're asking you to elaborate in those responses. I have told my students, if you give me bullets or one-word answers, so shall your letter of recommendation reflect. So the more you elaborate and tell me about yourself, the more I can enhance your letter of recommendation. And I can have you stand out. Parents, we're looking for you in that questionnaire to give us those anecdotal stories about when he or she was playing with those Lincoln logs and building these elaborate bridges, and you knew at that point in time they were going to be an engineer. Those are the stories we need as we do our creative writing to distinguish your student from everybody else. Students, letters of recommendation, if you're going to ask the teacher, you need to ask the teacher. You don't just write it down. And when we were in person, we would ask you to go personally and speak with them. Well, we can't do that now. So please send an email and ask them, would they be willing to write a letter of recommendation? And then we will be going over later, I think Ms. Morella said that at her opening, there is a number of things we can talk to you about. There's a video, there are forms that we have. Many of you have not found your way to them yet, but hopefully after tonight's presentation and we tell you exactly where to go, you'll go and look for those. Schedule an appointment, and then she'll talk to you about that with your counselor so you can talk about your letter of recommendation. I, as most of the counselors, also ask for a resume so that we can use all the materials we can get to write that creative letter of recommendation. Students who are athletes, if you are looking to play at that next level, then you should have registered for the NCAA and request a transcript to be uploaded to them. College application time is for you to really pay attention to detail. You need to read every instruction over and over again and make sure that you have crossed all your T's and dotted all your I's so that you don't miss an important step which then disqualifies you from being a candidate for that institution. Please do apply for every kind of scholarship. Financial aid is important. Those families who feel that they would not qualify for any financial aid, fill it out anyway. You never know what the circumstances will bring. DREAM Act also, applications are still available. And students, so much money is left on the table each year. So many students do not apply for scholarships that are out there. They have scholarships for all types of things. Go online and Google it, or you can speak with Ms. Perez as well, and she can lead you in that proper direction. I do hear every year about students who get millions of dollars in scholarships. Well, they're getting that money because you didn't apply for the money. So, therefore, if you apply, you might get something. There's stuff for left-handed people, one for people who have one brown eye, one blue eye. Hey, there's so much out there. There's something for you. Next slide, please. What do colleges want? Well, let's know. I'm going to tell you up front. They want you. Okay, there is some college out there with your name on it. So just understand, your rightful place does exist out there. We're going to go through this chart quickly. I'm trying to be a really good counselor this year and read all of what's on the screen. I don't usually do that when we're in person because I feel like you can read it yourself. I like to tell the anecdotal stories, but we don't want to be on this Zoom or this webinar, whatever this is called, forever. So I've been told to stick with the script. So I'm going to. So I know I'm not as funny as I usually am. It's because I've been told to lasso it in. Community colleges, application, breathing. No, but application is basically you don't have to submit transcripts, test scores, essays, letter of recommendations, and there's no interview. Okay, CSU, application, yes. Let's just go yes for across the board. Transcripts, sometimes it just depends upon the school, and sometimes they do a random thing where they're asking for information, and all the rest says no. That's subject test, essays, letters of rec, no. Okay, UCs, no submission of transcript off the top. It depends on what area you want to go into, whether subject tests are required or when they say recommended, we say read that as required. Essays, yes, they ask you to respond to 4 of 8 personal essay questions. Pick the ones you want. No one weights more than the other. They ask you to choose ones that resonate with you. No letters of recommendation necessarily. Sometimes randomly they may pick and then they may ask for a letter of recommendation or something else. And no, there's no interview. For private schools, yes, for everything. Interviews, it depends. Sometimes those Eastern schools will utilize their alums out here and have an interview with you. East Coast schools tend to be a little more traditional in that regard than some of our West Coast schools. All right, next slide, please. Sending transcripts, as it says there, which you can read for yourself, but I've been told to read it for you. CSU and UCs do not require a transcript when applying. Please do not request them on Naviance. If you already have, please delete. And Ms. Perez will reiterate that to you when she meets with you one-on-one before you get everything to your counselor. Right? The Common App and schools that require a school report, we automatically send. It's part of what we do through Naviance, okay? So please do not request a transcript separately on Naviance. We've already got you covered. Next. Sending test scores. Well, as Ms. Morella went over, she said all of that already. So I'm not even going to really bother with it because I'll probably end up confusing you and messing you up. So, but basically, if you've already taken the test and the SATs, ACTs, and you did well, send them in. Okay, it's not going to hurt you. If you haven't, don't worry. It's not going to harm you if you haven't. And typically what they're going to use them for is for placement as opposed to entry, okay? So this is a really good time. So again, for those of you who didn't take it, who were waiting and now you can't because it canceled in June, canceled in July when you were going to, don't worry about it. It's going to be all right. As I said at the top, a rightful place is still waiting for you. And community college. As I said before, you don't have to have, you do need to be 18, I guess. You have to be 18 and or have a high school diploma or GED. You cannot apply usually until the spring, which is usually around March. I know that they open it up. So whatever community college you're thinking about, go on their website and see when they say. And every community college is just not the same. So there is some flavor to it. Each has their own little unique and distinctive I call flavor. So look at them. Don't just go to because everybody's going to West Valley, you're going to go to West Valley. There might be something at Mission that really resonates and speaks to you more. So look around the area. Some students are already telling me that they're looking to go to community colleges maybe in Southern California. Some people want to go to the community college near UC that they're sure they're not going to get into. You don't know that, but they're sure they're not going to get into, and therefore they want to go there. See what qualifications need to be. The promises, and some community colleges having the first couple of years free for you might not be for people who come out of their region. So you really need to go online and look and see what that community college's talking about. What I mean is if you decide you want to be, go down by the beach, and so you're going to go to community college in the San Diego area, or yeah, just say, let's say San Diego area, you may not be eligible if they have some kind of a regional qualification or criteria for having the first 2 years paid for by them. So you just need to look and see and do your research also on community colleges. And parents, community colleges is a very affordable way to send your child to school for the first 2 years. I did it. I have two daughters. Daughter number one went to a very expensive private school here in California. She is still paying. So is her mother for her opportunity to be there. Daughter number two said, I don't want those kind of loans. And so she doesn't have them. And she now travels the world and she sends postcards to her mother and her sister who can't afford to go anywhere because we're paying those college loans off. So community college is really, really an affordable way to go. And I'm not sure, I don't have a crystal ball to know what we're going to be looking at right now for next year, but it might be a consideration before sending your student and paying an exorbitant amount of money for them to be sitting home with you on a computer. Just saying. Anyway, thank you for your time.
Good evening. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the UC CSU process. So to apply for the CSU, all you have to do is type into your browser Cal State Apply, and the website for the CSU, California State University website for applications will come up. Official transcripts, as was just already stated, are not necessary to be sent. So we will take care of that for your student. So you don't have to worry about that. And then test scores, as we just learned, they are going ACT, SAT blind, but they can use it for placement purposes. The UC admission website, the website URL is there. As was also stated, there are 8 personal insight questions. Your student will have to answer 4 of those 8 personal insight questions. I have had students in the past that did not read all 8 questions and just answered the first 4. Have your student read all 8 questions and make sure they answer the 4 that suit them well. We also are encouraging students, beware of telling your COVID-19 stories, because everybody in the country is going to be telling their COVID-19 stories, and they're going to all start sounding the same to a UC admissions counselor that's reading the same insight question over and over and over again. So make sure that it is something special and unique for your student. Putting in additional comments in the additional comments section is relevant. Again, transcripts and test scores are not necessarily needed, and only if they're requested. The test scores are not going to be looked at except for placement. Next slide, please. So this is the front of the Cal State Apply website. This, as you can see, October 1st to November 30th is when the open window for applications are. It is $70 per application, so $70 per school that you are going to apply for. You'll only fill out one application, and you can then send that one application to all schools. The Cal State Apply website is fantastic. If you have younger students, they also have information that pertains to high school freshmen, sophomores, juniors, and seniors. So it's something that the younger students can start looking at and getting some information on that. So I really encourage you to spend some time looking at the website. They do what are called college matches, how to find the college you want to go to. It's a very well-constructed website. Next. And then my final slide is the UC website. So again, this is the admission. Your students can start filling out their UC application now. Again, it's $70 per application per school. Again, you'll only fill out the application once, and then the application will be sent to all the schools that you are going to apply through. The submission window starts November 1st and goes through November 30th. But again, have them start that application process now. Thank you.
Hi, so I'll be talking about the UC Eligibility Index. And so this is another way that students can be ranked or scored. Specifically, there are two ways. The one is the statewide and one is in the local context. The statewide context means that if you're a student, or if you are a student, if you're in the top 9% of California high school graduates and you're not admitted to any of the UC campuses that you apply to, that you will be offered a spot on another campus if space is available. And the local context, it means that within your high school, we send transcript information to the UCs, and based on that, and based on also testing information, they will put this all into a formula and then calculate who are the top 9% students of that high school. And that is when admissions reviewers, when we review that, and I say we because I have reviewed for UC Santa Barbara and UC Santa Cruz, when we look at an application, we are able to see what is that student's ELC percentage if they have one. Again, it's only for the top 9%, and that is considered for that review. And if you're curious as to, well, how does that break down? Can I estimate what my students' ELC might be? Yes, you can do that. The link that we provide has that website where it gives you all the factors that are considered, and it gives you an estimate of what your student could be ranked if they are part of that top 9%. And then also gives you instructions as to if your student wants to know, well, what am I, right? Am I in that top 9%? How do I find out? Will I ever see that? That is also part of that link that is there. It's at the bottom of that page. And so this is just a brief overview, but again, rest assured that we send that information to the UC system to see if your student could possibly have this eligibility. Next. In terms of the comprehensive review factors, I really want to make sure and emphasize for the UC applications, it truly is a holistic review. It is not only based on grades at all, right? So what is considered these 14 factors? And every university has a board that comes together and talks for this next year of admissions. What do we want to prioritize for our university? Every UC looks at them, but maybe let's say UC Santa Barbara wants to emphasize a little bit more the quality of senior year versus maybe Berkeley wants to emphasize the community service. Like that really is dependent on the school, but nonetheless, all these factors are considered. The first one there being the quality of senior year program, meaning did the student challenge themselves, not just in 9th, 10th, and 11th grade, but all the way through. They never stopped choosing rigorous courses. That's kind of what is being looked at in that category. Special talents, achievements, and awards. Does this student have a special talent outside of the classroom? Are they a musician? Are they an athlete? And if so, have they won awards or at the local level, state level, national level? Like all of that is really important to note in the application. Promise for leadership. Were they in ASB? Were they in a club? Did they start a club? Like what do they show that promise of leadership? Recent marked improvement in academic performance. Maybe the students had a rough 9th grade, and even though UCs don't calculate the GPA for 9th grade, we still do look at that. When looking at the grades, we look at everything that is provided, but maybe we see that in 9th grade, the student had a rough time, but then they progress and then they did fine, right? So that is also something that is reviewed. Significant community service. Did this student go outside of their school and try to participate in some other ways, and not just in 11th and 12th grade, right? We kind of know that sometimes a student thinks, oh my gosh, I haven't done anything and I'm a junior and I'm about to apply. Really, to be consistent, it's best to have done it as many years as possible. So please also consider that. Participation in student government, like I said, that goes towards showing leadership, but if they were part of ASB, that's fantastic. Intensive study and exploration of other cultures. Again, we just want to make sure that the student is challenging themselves in every way possible, and that includes within their culture, right? Are they a student who maybe studied abroad, who maybe did some volunteerism in the summer and did something in another country? Anything like that is what is meant in that specific category. Even if they chose to explore a second, third language, that also goes towards that category. Next. And so in terms of the personal insight questions, like Mr. Lieber referenced earlier, there are 8 of them. Your student only has to answer 4 of them. And each response is limited to 350 words. What I always advise to people, to students, is to please choose the students that are going to allow you to present yourself, sell yourself in the best way possible. So try to pick some that you're not repeating the same answers to, that kind of show you in a different light. And sometimes a question, I always advise, don't think like an English teacher, and sometimes I even have to tell English teachers, when you are advising students for these questions, it's not a creative writing piece, okay? It can be really straightforward, doesn't have to have a lot of metaphors or flowery language. Really, just what is going to present yourself in the best light is what you want to do within these 4 questions. Next. Some of the common mistakes that you should avoid is talking about one campus. Sometimes I've read applications that say, it's been my dream to attend UC Berkeley, but I'm reviewing for UC Santa Cruz. So now you've kind of already told me that we're not anywhere near your top choice, right? So you don't want to do that. Just like when you send a resume out or a cover letter and you say, I really want to work there, and it's the wrong company, same thing, right? Inappropriate use of humor. It's just that when you write things and when you are in person, they're 2 totally different things. And so sometimes a student may use humor and it doesn't present very well on paper. So avoid that as much as possible. Creative writing, like I've said, this is not a poetry contest or anything like that. So kind of avoid that as much as possible. 350 words goes really fast. So if you're going to be using it for that, you're kind of wasting space, right, is what I say. So try to minimize that. Quotations, same thing. It's great that Einstein or whomever said that, but what are you saying, right? So kind of avoid that. Generalities, stick to facts and personal examples. Really, we're just looking for details. As much detail as you can be, the best, but about yourself. Repetition, give us new info. So yes, I don't want to necessarily say avoid all your COVID stories, right? Because yes, we all are going through this, but it doesn't necessarily mean that your situation is not special, is not unique, right? So I would always, like we tell students, have somebody else review your personal insight questions, your essays, right? And ask that question. If you are writing about your COVID story, does this sound like anybody else's story, right? Or am I presenting this story in a way that shows how this situation is unique to me and to what happened to me? So keep that in mind. Asking philosophical questions. Sometimes I've read essays or personal insight questions that start with, what is the meaning of life, right? And it's like, cool, you're 18. Already sets me off of like, I don't know. I don't know if this is going to be answered in 350 questions. So avoid questions like that. Acronyms, spell it out for us, especially if you're a part of some program like Project Lead the Way. PLTW might make it so that you have more 350 words to use, but somebody reading this may not know anything about PLTW, so they don't know what that stands for. So please spell out the acronyms if you're going to use them. Next. Additional comments section. So this section is used for clarification and expansion on important details. It's meant for you to explain something off in your grades, okay? It's not meant as an additional personal insight question. Sometimes students want to use it like that, but please just stick to explaining something unique within your grades. For example, maybe during 10th grade, unfortunately, maybe you had a parent or a close one have cancer and you were in the hospital a lot. And so maybe you couldn't really focus in school. And so you may write that, right? During 10th grade, first semester, you might see my grades dip. This was due to blank, right? So that's kind of what that's about. Sometimes I've had students write in there, I had a terrible teacher, or I had a terrible substitute during the semester, which I caution students to use, because then that makes me question, well, what did you do as a student to pursue your learning and still get what you want out of that class, right? Like, did you do extra tutoring? Did you do Khan Academy? Like, what did you do? Instead of blaming like one person for your results, right? Like, let's be responsible for our grades, for our actions. And so I caution people when they want to say something like that in that portion. Next. And finally, some tips for students in terms of the application. Please make sure you complete everything really carefully. Tell us everything that we are asking, the majors of interest that you are thinking about. Choose those wisely as well. There are some schools like UC San Diego that is kind of like a stickler as to what campus you're choosing. So really, really make sure that you do your research. Go to that school's website, look at the majors, see what kind of things they offer, and make sure you're choosing the right ones. Family backgrounds, please fill out all the fields. Sometimes students don't know what is the income of my parents. I have no idea. I'm gonna put 0, right? That when I'm looking at that application, then I'm like, what, 0? How is this possible? And you're doing these things, like everything from the beginning of that application to the end of that application does provide context. And so we need to know that. Participation in activities, nothing is too small. If your student is taking care of maybe their grandparent or of a smaller sibling, that is an activity, right? And that tells me, oh, maybe that's why you couldn't be in a lot of clubs, is because you're spending 5 hours every week taking care of a younger sibling. Please don't forget everything. Use transcripts. We have mailed those. They are also found in Aries. If you want even a newer one, again, go to Aries. You can email us. We'd happy to provide that, but just make sure everything is reflecting what's in the transcript. And like I said, avoid abbreviations. I want to reference and make sure that you know that these tips, as well as other ones that I've written, are found in the senior page under the document UC, or tips for the UC applications from the perspective of a UC admissions reviewer. So all of that plus more is in there. It gives you the perspective of like, what are we thinking when we review this app? So I really recommend that you and your student, or if you're the student, you please look at that while you're filling out this application. All right.
Okay, so now we're going to move on to the private school information. One of the pieces that's really important is that your students always read the instructions thoroughly. With everything being very competitive now to get into different campuses, if they forget one piece or don't submit something on time, that's an easy thing for the campus to say, denied. So we don't want to give them that opportunity to just easily kind of not accept your students. And so it's really important that they're reading those instructions throughout and submitting by the deadline and not missing that. With the private schools and the out-of-state campuses, it's really important that your students work with their counselors really closely because documents do need to be sent. So whether that's a transcript, whether that's letters of recommendation, so it's really important that they are communicating with us what their list is, when they need those documents submitted by, so we can make sure that everything is taken care of before the deadline. All of this information must be put into Naviance in order for us to send in those documents, so to send in the transcripts or to send in the letters of recommendation. So one of the process that we've put together, and your students will hear kind of us talk about it, is the pink letter of rec sheet. And so that is what we use with the private and out-of-state colleges to get a list from your students on where they're applying and what they're going to need in order to meet the requirements. And so they will complete that form. They will meet with Ms. Perez. That is part of the requirement. There are some additional forms as well that they will complete, and then they will meet with us, and that is an indicator to their counselors what schools they are applying to and what kind of forms they're going to need. One big piece is deadlines are not suggestions, so they definitely need to make sure that they are submitting before that deadline. One of the tips that I always tell students is sometimes they will wait for either the counselor or the teachers to finish their letters of recommendation. They do not need to wait. So if they have their applications ready to go for that private school or for the out-of-state campus, have them go ahead and submit it. We will submit their letter of rec either from the counselor or from the teachers once it is ready. They don't need to necessarily wait for us to be done. Within the application process for the private colleges, they do all have their own process. So it is not a similar deadline like the CSUs and the UCs have one deadline of November 30th. The private campuses all have their own different deadlines. So it's really important that they are looking at each campus individually. Again, looking at each campus individually to see, especially with COVID, what are they doing with their testing requirements? Have they moved to test optional? Have they moved to test blind? That is going to be an extremely important piece for this year. Many campuses use the Common Application. That's probably most known. There are other applications such as the Coalition app, or some campuses do not use either, and they will just be submitting the application directly through the institution themselves. And so they will have a section on their website for them to apply. But within the Common App, if a school is using that, we do highly suggest to your students that they use it instead of applying directly through the institution, because that is a way for us to just easily submit their documents that are needed through Naviance. So if they are using the Common App, we do suggest that they use that application. Within the Common Application, they will have a personal college essay. So there are 7 questions that your students can choose. Again, have your students read through all 7 and really choose the one question that fits best for them, that they feel like they can answer well, and really kind of explain who they are, because that's what these colleges are looking for. Some of the colleges will have additional supplemental essays, and that varies by college. So again, they will need to look at, do they require just the personal statement, or do they have supplemental essays as well? So if they do, your students are going to be required to complete those essays as well. Most of them are going to require teacher letters of recommendation, depending on the amount that's going to be listed on their website. So it could be 1 teacher, it could be 2 teachers. It's important for them to look at are they asking for specific teachers? So sometimes I've seen where the student needs to get 1 teacher letter of recommendation from a humanities teacher and 1 letter of recommendation from a math or science. Some will just blanket and say they want 2 letters of recommendation. So it's important that they're looking to make sure that they're asking the appropriate teachers depending on what the campuses are wanting. And again, they'll also be able to see on that section of their website whether or not a counselor letter of recommendation is needed. If it is, then they would need to communicate with us. As the counselors, we will submit the school report. Within the school report, it does include their transcripts. So that's what we were saying, as those transcripts are already submitted when we have to submit that report. With the official test scores, again, like I said, you would need to look and see for each campus, is it optional, is it blind? If it is optional and it was a good score and you want to send it in, send it in. If it was not a great score and you don't, you have the option not to submit. And again, if you were not able to take it, like I said, most of the conferences I have attended thus far, the colleges are all saying that you will not be at a disadvantage if you were not able to submit that. One of the big pieces, though, with the application process for the private colleges is, again, those letters of rec survey. So there are the parent one, there is the counselor one, and there is the teacher one, and you can get those all through Naviance. What I will tell you is the more detail, the more meat you put into those surveys, the better those letters of recommendation are going to be. So that is what we pull from when we are trying to write your letter of recommendation. So if it is 2 sentences, that's not much for us to go by. So please work with your students on putting as much detail as they can into those questions, because it truly does help us out. In addition, we do suggest that all students do financial aid, and Ms. Perez will kind of walk through that on another slide. So I will let her do that. And then again, just every school has their own deadlines, so please make sure that you are checking those. We are working with all the students on what way are they planning on applying. Are they doing regular decision? Are they doing early action, early decision? It does change the deadlines depending on what type of process they are following. So if they are doing early action or early decision, these documents that we're needing, so the survey, meeting with Ms. Perez, meeting with us as the counselors, it's going to be very early. That deadline is October 2nd. And the reason for that is because these applications are due very quickly, some at the end of October, November 1st, and into the middle of November. And so we want to make sure that we're able to get all the documents that are needed for your students. One big piece is there is a difference between early action and early decision. So early decision is a binding contract. So if your student does apply to a campus for early decision, and if they are accepted, then they must go to that campus. With early action, it is non-binding. So they can apply early, see if they get in. They can still wait for the rest of the decisions to come through and then make a decision. When you're looking at how many schools to do early action with, you're really looking at what's your dream school, what's your top schools. It wouldn't be to do it for all, it would be for what are those few that you really want to kind of know right away. With early decision, you are only allowed to do one school. So most students will do regular decision, and those documents would be due later into the end of October. And so regular decision is non-binding. You would apply, and then you would wait into the spring semester to see whether or not you are accepted. So here are those dates. So if your students are doing early action or early decision, they do need to get us the pink letter of recommendation form by Friday, October 2nd. That form needs to get to us counselors by October 2nd, which means they need to meet with Ms. Perez prior to that date. And then if they are doing regular decision, it is due Friday, October 30th. And again, they would need to meet with Ms. Perez prior to giving it to us as the counselor. So we are the last ones that they will meet with by those deadlines. And then just a reminder that for all admission decisions, whether it's CSUs, UCs, privates, out of states, they are provisional until all required documents, including final transcripts from their senior year, are received. So this is where we have some harsh conversations sometimes with seniors, that it is really important that they still get those C's and above in all of their senior classes, because if they get a D or an F in a class that they needed in order to keep their acceptance, the college has the right to revoke that acceptance. And so we don't want to have that happen. And so please work with your seniors just to make sure that they are continuing to pass their classes both in the fall and the spring semester. And then again, just making sure that they have submitted all the required forms and documents by the deadline. And then after the application, so regardless of what campuses you are applying to, all of them, you will receive an email confirmation that your application has been received. It's really important that for all of the campuses that your students are applying to, that they set up a portal, an account within the campus. And so that's how they're going to communicate. They will not communicate through Naviance. They don't send emails. It will be directly through that portal. And so it's important for every single campus they have set that up after they receive the email confirmation that their application has been received. One of the pieces that we hear from the campuses every year is please make sure that the students are using a professional email. So if it is not a professional email at this point, they do need to change it when they are applying. Usually I would recommend, you know, first initial of your first name and then your last name, at least to try that. That's at least mostly professional. And then again, just following all the directions, making sure that transcripts are submitted, letters are submitted, any other documents that are needed, especially by those deadlines. Within those portals or their emails, I would recommend that they are checking them at least once a week. So maybe the student sets up a routine that every Monday they're going to check their email and they're going to check all of those portals to make sure that they're not missing anything. That is the way that they will communicate if they still are missing a transcript or if they are missing a letter of recommendation. They are going to communicate through those portals. If your students are having questions about the universities once they do receive their admission to the campus, they all will be still holding some kind of an orientation, whether that is in person or virtual. We don't know at this point, but they also will be holding that. And so all of those questions can be answered within that orientation. But if they do have any questions after they have submitted their application or after they have received their acceptance, they can reach out to the admissions office directly to get those questions answered. And I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Perez.
Hi, so as we all know, the financial piece can play a big part of our college decisions. And we are going to have our financial aid night where we're going to walk through what you'll need to complete the FAFSA or the DREAM Act application. So this is going to be a very just brief kind of overview of things that you can kind of get started in doing right now in terms of financial aid. And something that is very, very exciting. We just last week started this partnership with this, it's an application, Admit, that actually allows students and families to go in and do their college kind of research in the kind of mindset of finances. So it actually gives different institutions grades as far as their financial aid packages and the value and return on investment. So it's a really great tool. We have our own kind of Branham High School landing page through this application, so you all have access to it. The link is here, so when you get the slides later, you can go ahead and check it out. You'll create an account. There's a full dashboard that has a lot of great information, and there's one piece in particular that I'm excited about. It's actually, they go through how to appeal financial aid decisions. So essentially how to ask for more aid if you feel that what your student was offered is not enough, or if it doesn't reflect your current financial situation. So when you are applying for financial aid, you're actually using your tax returns from 2 years ago. So a lot of us may have been, affected by COVID, whatever other, situations. So your financial situation may not be reflected based on what it was 2 years ago. So it walks you through how to actually appeal and ask for more aid, which is really, really great. So I do recommend that. Also, the other thing to be doing now is applying for scholarships. It is never too early, especially now when you're not on campus, there's a little more time. It's a great opportunity to really, it's a hustle and apply to as many scholarships as you can. I did include 2 separate links. One is Going Merry. It is a website that essentially your student will create their profile and they will only be able to kind of go through scholarships that they're actually eligible for. So they're not needing to filter through a lot of things that they wouldn't even be able to apply for. And then the second link is the scholarship list that I compile every year. So it's a mix of national big scholarships, some local scholarships. I do recommend looking at that sheet. It is constantly updated. So that is another resource for you. And then as far as applying for state and federal aid, we will be hosting our financial aid night where you're gonna get a whole very in-depth look at how to actually do that and the differences between those applications. Next slide. And that night is on October 13th. And so we highly recommend you coming to this. I believe it was Ms. Davis who mentioned the application earlier and how important it is to submit these financial aid applications, no matter if you think you won't qualify or if you have an older student who maybe applied and did not qualify. We do recommend that everybody apply. And this night just kind of walks you through all of that information. And then we'll also have a follow-up with the Cash for College night where we actually, there are volunteers, and granted, not exactly sure what it will look like this year due to it being virtual, but typically we have volunteers who are there just helping answer specific questions within the FAFSA or the DREAM Act applications. So we do recommend that if you are having issues with completing those applications. And then the other big date to note is November 30th, because majority of our students are applying within the CSU and UC systems, and there is no early option for the UCs. That deadline is set at November 30th. They are not gonna take anything after that. So you wanna make sure that you are paying attention to that deadline, November 30th. And then the other important dates just to remember are for your out-of-state private schools. Like Ms. Morella said, just please pay attention to those deadlines. You don't want to miss out on a great opportunity with a school simply because you weren't paying attention to a deadline. Thank you.
So we are towards the end of the presentation. I know we have thrown a lot of information at you tonight, but we did want to just share with you Normally, if we were on site and in our offices, we would have pulled every senior for an individual meeting. We had called them our senior individual 20-minute meetings. But with COVID, we are not going to really be able to do that. And so what we did was myself and Ms. Miguel put together a senior video that was sent to all of your students on August 24th to their school Gmail account. So it wasn't sent through Canvas, it was sent to their Gmail account. And so if they haven't watched the video, please have them watch it, because it does walk them through just how to do some transcript review, also some college research, and then it does walk them through that letter of recommendation process and what is going to be required. Within our senior year page on our website, we do have all of the video, the documents. So we have in there what's called a senior application checklist. That checklist walks through the CSU system, the UC, privates, how to access their Naviance account, financial aid, and also sending in test scores if that is something that they are still going to need to do. And then also we have our parent night PowerPoints, which are on there. Currently right now they are last year's. I will be replacing the senior parent night with this one and the video by tomorrow. And then once we hold the financial aid night, we will replace that with the one from last year, as West Valley does come out and present on financial aid. So within this PowerPoint, there is the link for the senior year page. But again, if you can just remind your students to please watch that video. Once they've done that, there are also other videos Ms. Perez put together. If you do not know how to log into their Naviance account, there's a video on how to do that. There's also a video on doing college research if they still need to do that to create their college list, which they do want to get on that right away if they have not done that. And then in Naviance, how to add those colleges to their list. One of the big pieces within Naviance is we do need them to list every single campus that they are going to apply to. So then that way we can make sure that any required documents do get submitted. I did include our contact information. I will come back to this slide. But how we are doing things this year with distance learning, we have all set up a link for office hours. We are trying to make ourselves as available as we can for the students. So we have appointment times in the morning, we have appointment times during tutorial, during lunch, during 6th and 7th period, and even after school. And so they're able to click on one of our office hours and then they can sign up. We've all designated either 10-minute meetings, 15-minute meetings, 20-minute meetings. So your students can go in there and sign up for a time that works for them, and then we can still hold that individual meeting or check in about the letter of recommendation process. One other piece that I want to share about the appointments is it's not only just for college applications. So if your students need anything throughout the year, and this is including all grades, not even just seniors, they can click this link and get a hold of us. We can help them with their academics, or if they need somebody to talk to. We are here to help and support your students while they are at home, as we know that that is extremely challenging this year with COVID. One of the pieces I wanted to show you was on the website where you can find everything. Please just bear with me. I'm not the best on Zoom yet, but I will get us there. Okay, so hopefully you are now all seeing the school's website. So one of the two things I wanted to show you was if you go under school news, under the Branham newsletter, every single week, Ms. Lawton is sharing out a link for the Bruin Bulletin. And in that bulletin, you will see different categories. So there is general information, activities, athletics, there's counseling, college and career updates, and wellness updates. So in our section, that is where we are going to be posting our links so that students can make appointments. Also, when we're having a parent night, and then just other important information, that is where we're going to be trying to post things on a weekly basis so that you are staying up to date with anything that is guidance related. One of the other areas that I wanted to show you, so if you go to student services and then down to counseling department, on our main page, you'll see all of our information, our emails. We have all added a Google Voice number. So most of us are not in our offices on most days. And so if you do need to get a hold of us or leave us a message, you can call the school's number as well, but you could also call our Google Voice number and we can get back to you that way. The link for our office hours is here as well. And then there's information for Ms. Perez and her office hours. On the right-hand side is where you will scroll down and you will see the senior year. So there is, if you have other students in other grades, we have information for each grade level, but for tonight, we will show you what the senior year page looks like. And so on this page is where we have uploaded the video that we emailed out to students, along with the PowerPoint. There is the checklist that I had mentioned, and all just other documents that students can come in, the letter of recommendation form. So they can come into here and get all of these forms that they might need. And then again, for you as parents, it'll have all of the parent nights PowerPoints in there as well. So I just wanted to share that with you. And then I will go back to the PowerPoint. And so here you have our contact information. So if you need to get a hold of us or have any specific questions that we're maybe not able to answer tonight, please feel free to email us and we can get back to you with those questions. I am going to ask the group, was there any questions that we need to answer live? I wasn't able to see the Q&A or the chat box with sharing my screen.
I would just like to say one thing, that if you want access to Naviance as a parent, you can reach out to me. My email account is there at the bottom, vliebern@cuhsd.org, and I will send you that account access.
Were there any other questions that we maybe didn't answer in the Q&A section?
Does a teacher write recommendation letters in the form that students pick up? We
So
write
they
letters.
will list on the form, on the right-hand side, they will tell us which teachers are writing that letter of recommendation, but they will write that on a Word document and then upload it through Naviance to actually submit it for your students. But it's important that they're telling us who is writing their letter of recommendation. That way, when they meet with Ms. Perez, she can help them actually request the teachers in Naviance.
Ms. Perez, maybe you can answer this one. Is there financial assistance available for college applications?
Financial
Financial assistance for college applications.
fee waivers. If your students qualified for the SAT or ACT fee waiver, they would also qualify for within the UC's 4 application fee waivers, the same with the CSU. Also within the applications, there is a question that will ask for the income and household size that will right then also tell you if you qualify for a fee waiver. And with private schools, they all will typically, and out of state, they'll typically have some question within the application that will allow you to enter in that information to see if you qualify for a fee waiver. I also recommend college visits because sometimes they will also offer fee waivers just for students who've shown up.
So it looks like we have answered all of the questions that were in the Q&A. I really, all of us today really appreciate you all coming to our Senior Parent Night, and thank you for bearing with us as this was the first webinar we have done. Looks like maybe a couple more questions have come through. There is not a placement test for the community college anymore. There used to be for English and math. They no longer do that placement test. And they are just using the courses that they have taken and the grades they've received in order to place them in math and English once they start. And there's a question, do you recommend putting in an application for colleges for which a student is applying for a scholarship before or after the scholarship answer is given?
If that's a scholarship specific to that university, if that's what you're asking about, then typically you would need to submit your application as well and then be considered for the scholarship. If I'm understanding the question.
The school profile is not up yet. We are updating that. We wanted to kind of wait to get everything settled. And so Ms. Hong, our assistant principal, is working on that, and it should be up by the next week. We typically load that into Naviance. And then our school code is on our website on the main page. It is 053082. But that is, if you're on our main counseling page at the bottom, it is listed there.
And Ms. Morello, I want to say in the event that you didn't get to see that people were saying that you were navigating this very, very well in terms of your presentation and back. So you should.
Well, thank you, everybody. I appreciate it. I'm not the most tech savvy, but I'm learning how to do it all. If there are further questions, please feel free to email us. We are more than happy to answer those questions. We know that especially with this year and with COVID, everything is more complicated than it's ever been, I think. And so please have your students reach out to us. We definitely want to make sure that they have the correct information. And we are as available as we can be, even from our houses. So please have them reach out, make those appointments, or email. And thank you, everybody, for attending tonight, and enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you.